I've been doing this long enough. Usually what happens is right when we're on the verge of like, this team is trash, watch them go on a run here the next like 2 or 3 games where it's like, oh, what is this? Watch, that's always how it happens. They just give you enough to keep hope alive. But that is the roller coaster ride of being a fan, right? I've been watching this team in the NBA for over 35 years. And so I've seen patterns before, right? And I'm not surprised that they came out in Minnesota with, I've been using the word desperate, like they need to play desperate urgency, right? They look like a team that felt disrespected last night, right? And it's funny because they kind of did it to themselves. The messaging from the core, the way they had been playing, right? And it was like, hey, what do you want us to do as fans? Like, we're super frustrated. And then the message that you're relaying is not what we want to hear, whether it's right or wrong. And so, hey, however you got to motivate yourselves and feel disrespected and put that chip on your shoulder, I'm here for it. I'll continue to sit here and disrespect Steve Kerr if he's going to coach with his hair on fire like he did last night. Because Steve, listen, no coach is going to make all the right decisions and pull all the right strings and the rotation things. We've talked about it, ad nauseum. But what he can do is be more engaged and be more of a motivator and be more fired up. And that's what we saw from Steve last night. From last night, Steve, it looked like his competitive juices and his pride really kicked in. Like he had heard all the chatter and he was like, nah. Right? I can't remember the last time I've seen him that fired up throughout that game. Now, the ref certainly gave him reason to be. 20 free throws in that, was it the second quarter? That was nasty. Where do I want to start? Let's start with Andrew Wiggins. Because, look, when he goes back to Minnesota, he's got a little extra motivation like all players do when they see their former team. But I thought there was a little added layer to it of the matchup with Anthony Edwards. Kind of like he was at one time Anthony Edwards for the Minnesota Timberwolves, the number 1 pick, the savior of the franchise. Now Ant's projection is going a little better, right? Obviously. But every time that Ant went on a little run, Wiggins answered it, right? Steph had gone to the locker room at the end of the third quarter. We were all holding our breath, like, what's going on, right? And Wiggins carried us. And last night, he looked like that second star that we've been begging for him to be. And I think that Wiggins has been consistent enough this season that it warrants that you nurture that. You make sure Wiggins gets 15 shots a night, And so that was very encouraging and a huge part of what happened last night. Trace Jackson Davis, 15 rebounds. That's got to be a career high or somewhere abouts. He may have had something around that, right? But look, listen, I think that Trace, the offensive limitations are probably always going to be what they're going to be. And that's what that's why I feel like he's not a starting center moving forward. I don't want to say probably. I don't want to backtrack on it. I said he's not. I don't think he is. The one way where he could possibly be and make up for that is if he somehow became a dominant rebounder. And the reason that Trace doesn't rebound, he rebounds all right? Like he has a super quick second jump. Like he's not a bad rebounder. But when you look at his physical attributes, you're like, dang, you should probably be better. But Trace chases blocks, much like JaVale McGee. You remember JaVale for us, right? Where he'd give you 4 or 5 blocks in a game, then he'd give you like 5 or 6 rebounds. And it's just, that's an inherent nature of a guy that chases blocks, pulls himself out of position to rebound. Where you think about Kevon's not chasing blocks. He's fighting for positioning at all times. That's part of why he's an elite rebounder. And last night, Trace, he stayed down. He didn't chase blocks, right? It's one thing to rotate over and get a block. That's fine. But particularly on his own man, when he was on Randall, he had some great stops or a guard would penetrate into the paint. He just stayed down and stayed big. And that allowed for him to have more opportunities to rebound the ball. And he had juice. The whole team had juice and was playing, again, with a sense of disrespect that I think we've been waiting to see. Like they've heard, like, hey, yep, like y'all are getting whooped on. It doesn't seem like you want to compete anymore. Like their pride was on the line last night. And it showed all the way up and down the roster. GP2 returns. That certainly helps the rotations and the defensive intensity, right? And I said it in today's breakdown, like GP2, he looks like GP2. Every time he comes back, you're like, oh, he looks like GP2, right? But it's almost like when you dust off an old cell phone and you charge it up and it goes to 100% on the battery, and you're like, it's brand new. It's working like it's brand new. And then you look and you're like, it's at 20%? What? Right? And I don't want to diss GP2 because he's I don't know how much you can blame on it. It is what it is. His playing style, his body, it is what it is. His availability, right? But you saw him holding the groin after the dunk, and he finished the game. But the thing is with GP2, if in his history is he will hurt himself in a game and he'll play through it. And then you find out the next day that he's hurt, right? That's probably part of the reason his injuries take so long sometimes is because he doesn't want to say anything about it. And I kind of get it because of the narrative around his availability and durability, when he does hurt himself, he tries to kind of like act like it didn't happen until he has to acknowledge it. So fingers crossed that GP2's good. I don't know what he was doing, holding his groin, and he did finish the game and he did have an impact. But let's talk about the dust up between he and Buddy Hield. Now, I went through the tape. Again, the full breakdown, I'll put the link in the description. My understanding of it was that there was a couple of sequences that led to the frustration. GP2, much like Draymond, plays by his own rules defensively because he kind of can. He's so good at recovering, disrupting, anticipating, right? He'll kind of break the principles of the defense because he can. And there were several closeouts where it was supposed to be an X out, where Buddy closes out to GP2's man, GP2 closes out to his man, but GP2 would stunt and then get back to his. And it was kind of confusing Buddy, who's probably saying like, hey, that's not the principle of the defense, right? And so then GP2, again, just doing his own thing, doing what he does, coming off Dante, who was hot, digging down. I believe Buddy stepped to him and was like, hey, and tried to kind of correct what he was doing. And Gary was like, no. I've sat here the last month on the bench and watched you make bonehead play after bonehead play. What we're not going to do is have you tell me how to defend on this team. I think that that's what happened. Now, Schroeder kind of pulls them together, and that's what was the positive about it. It would be far worse if they cussed at each other and then didn't look at each other the rest of the game, right? And ignored each other. You have to keep an open line of communication and talk your way through it. And GP doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to hold a grudge, right? But it's Buddy kind of not knowing his place in reading the room, right? But I would imagine that Gary has been sitting there the last month, in street clothes, watching Buddy kind of shit himself out there. And he's like, no, you ain't gonna tell me how to play, bro, right? You ain't gonna tell me how to play. So that's how I interpreted that. But I liked that the communication was fine. And I even watched GP2 run over and scoop up Buddy after the 3 free throws. Like, I think that they can move past it. Buddy has to understand Draymond and GP2, their defensive principles are not yours. And then Buddy, 6 of 11, hit a couple of clutch shots, right? Like he was due. And this is one game. We need to see this be sustained. The rotations, the effort level defensively, we know it's not sustainable every quarter of every game, especially with an older team. But can they do it for halves? Can they do it for 3 quarters more consistently that will give them a better chance, give them a cushion on a night-to-night basis? I want to talk Moses Moody. I want to give him his credit. I want to talk Guy Santos. But before that, Underdog Fantasy. Y'all know the drill. The picks. We're having fun. If you haven't already deposited, 50% bonus on your first deposit up to $1,000. That offer is going to be done soon. So go ahead and take advantage of it. And, you've got NFL playoffs. You've got all sorts of boosts, picks, and specials that are going to be running through the weekend and consistently through the rest of the NBA season. And so Underdog is a huge supporter of the channel, and it's a great way to support me by signing up and using the code Alchemy. The link will be in the description. Draymond was sick. I don't know what's going on with Draymond. And I had tweeted out under an Anthony Slater post when they announced Draymond was out, and then he goes, Quentin Post logistically couldn't get there. They had sent him back to the G League. By the way, Quentin Post is dominating the G League. And, I admit it was probably I was being over dramatic and frustrated. And it was like, this is turning into a clown show. And the point wasn't that Quentin Post was going to save the day and play 25 or 30 minutes last night. The point was that they haven't recognized with all these injuries that he shouldn't be up on the roster and be available for these situations. That's what frustrated me. But you had no Draymond. Slow-Mo had a sore hamstring. So Guy Santos gets his first start, and I really like what I'm seeing from Guy, man. I really like what I'm seeing from Guy. In particular, the shots he got Steph last night. He got the shots that Draymond gets Steph. Now, we know he's never going to be Draymond defensively, but offensively, grab and go and flow, vision, timing, understanding the offense, making the simple play. He got Steph the shots that Steph wanted. We know he's high motor, right? Now, the fouls, last night, it's hard to call. Almost everybody fouled out, right? But I think that, he's going to be a high foul guy regardless because of his effort and energy. But his vision as a passer, his ability to grab and go, and we've seen him shoot the three and all that. So I'm intrigued. So long as Kuminga, is rehabbing the ankle and Draymond in it, we need to see more Guy Santos. I'm not saying he's got to start, but he clearly fits what the Warriors are trying to do. He fits the Warriors' ethos. They've developed him, and he's ready now to contribute. So there's that. I'm excited and intrigued for Guy moving forward. Now, Moses, because there was no Draymond, no Slow-Mo, played minutes at the 4. And it was kind of intriguing. It was kind of intriguing in the sense of, because Moses' issue defensively is moving laterally on the perimeter, right, and guarding these quicker guards. And at the 4 spot, he can kind of lean into what he is good at, being strong, being physical, being long, right? And then in turn, on the offensive end, I think it gives him bigger windows to shoot the 3. If there's these cross matchups or there's a 4 matched up on him, they're just not as tight out on the 3-point line. And it gives him that window to get that shot off. And so, look, I know that I sat here and dissed Moses and pretty much everybody. Again, I'll disrespect all y'all if you're going to play like that every night. But I would love to be wrong about Moody. Believe me, I'm not sitting here to be right. I want the Warriors to be good. And if Moses Moody's good, that means the Warriors are better. So I don't know how realistic it is to play Moses at the 4 on a regular basis, but they may have stumbled in a way to use him a little bit. And he's long enough and strong enough where I don't know how. I think there are plenty of matchups in the league where you're like, oh, he could play the 4 against him. He could play the 4 against him. And then it just opens up, more of his strengths. But overall, it was just a very good team effort, right? And Kerr being extra fiery. Now down the stretch, man, I don't know. I think that they've got to work on their inbounds plays, right? That's been an ongoing issue. And then Kerr calls the timeout after the made 3. And while it was a mental error, it seemed, because, right, if you're going to call that, you call that when we can't inbound it. But I think it also represented Steve's urgency and kind of acknowledging, I've got to be more hands-on in the clutch minutes. I've got to use timeouts. I can't just let it play out, right? So I thought that was encouraging. And now, what I've probably buried the lead, because quietly in all these narratives, right? And you heard Steph after the game kind of go at the fan base. Hey, you did it to yourself, Steph. We didn't like what you had to say. Now, if you feel disrespected and you're highly motivated and the juices are flowing again, good. That's what we want, right? But buried in all these losses of late and all the talk and all this is for the last, I don't know, for 2 weeks or so, Steph has looked like Steph again, right? The month of December. And people have pointed out to me in the past, hey, Steph traditionally struggles in December. And it was okay, fine. But I think we're all also looking at our clock and his age. And it's hey, what is this looking like? And so the last 2 weeks, Steph has looked like Steph. That's ultimately the most important thing. Now, can they sustain this effort, this hunger, and this chip on their shoulder to go on a little bit of a run here? They're back at 500, 20-20, 8 of the next 9 at home. Jordan Poole will be at Chase Center Saturday. That will be a fun one, right? And then Boston is, they're going to be looking for revenge. But that's what's so weird is as much losing as we've been doing, you look at the standings and you're like, we're all jumbled up. They're all jumbled up. The Kings have felt like they've won 10 in a row. They've got the same record. It's kind of strange, but it's a start, right? They've got to start stringing them together. It can't be this effort once every 2 weeks when, it's come to a tipping point and people are questioning their competitiveness. They've got to find the chip on their shoulder on a nightly basis. And we'll see. We'll see what happens, right? We're only halfway through this thing. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.